Yo, that's the stupid pose for this morning. A monkey scratching his head, because that's what I feel like this morning. Welcome back, or welcome if this is your first time here. I'm back in the office, the Ragnarok Survival HQ, the secret bunker that no one knows about. I'm currently approximately 50 meters underground, sealed in a bunker with at least 12 to 18 months worth of supplies. Now I'm lying. I'm just in a room in my house. It'd be a lot cooler though if I was, right? Anyway, you are listening to me, and this is the SitRep, the situational report, where I go through news stories over the past 24 hours and pick out things that I found interesting and talk about them from the perspective of prepping, and especially a little bit of the Aussie slant on it, a bit about down under prepping, bogan prepping. It's not really bogan prepping. I think a lot of bogans are actually quite prepped in a weird way. Like, hear me out on this. That the way they think, the way they do things. I mean, you got your sort of more, live by the seat of their pants type bogans, but you got bogans who are then more country bogan, who are living out in a rural area. And I think those kind of people are living. People who don't come from Australia probably have no idea what a bogan is. A bogan's like a redneck. It's an Australian version of a redneck. Driving motorbikes around and, old cars that have souped up and drinking beer and Bundy rum, which is a horrific kind of rum. If you ever come across it, give it a crack. Anyway, let's get on with the stories today. I want to do a little quick shout out to everyone who's been dropping messages. I haven't gone through the comments on YouTube, but thank you very much for all the comments people have been putting in. Appreciate it. I do read them. I don't always answer them straight away, but I usually get around to it. And yeah, that's where we're at today. Okay, so the big thing that came in yesterday, I was working yesterday and I was still checking the news. I was like, whoa, this is pretty serious. Is that we've got this whole monkeypox thing. I've been keeping my eye on this. I flagged this when it first popped up, and I said, monkeypox, let's keep our eye on this, just see where this goes. I've delved into it a little bit. I looked at what monkeypox was, and apparently how this newer version of it is differing, which actually isn't that much, and how it comes from smallpox. So I started doing a little bit of research on smallpox vaccine, on monkeypox, and how it, the signs and symptoms of it and how it's transmitted primarily is what I was looking at. And I kind of looked at how it was transmitted, and I said, this isn't actually a real problem. I don't think this could be a real problem. It's not. It doesn't look that way from the start, from this point here. But the news keeps hammering it, keeps pushing this. So, I've continued to keep my eye on it. As of yesterday, the CDC has activated Emergency Operations Center due to the monkeypox outbreak. Scientists say they have potentially found accelerated evolution. To go into this a little bit, just a tiny bit more depth, essentially what they were saying is the previous monkeypox outbreak that they saw, they would expect this one to be about the same, and it should have about maybe 10 to 15 evolutions going in it, and they're seeing upwards of 50 at the moment. So perhaps it's not to say that it has become more virulent. They have not found that it's more virulent yet. They have not found that it's doing anything different from the other one. They've just found more evolutions of it. So they're saying that's accelerated evolution. CDC has thrown up the red balloon. They've released the 99 red balloons, and they're freaking out. They've obviously hit the big red button. That's also rippled through. The World Health Organization has called an emergency meeting to see whether they need to reclassify this, because they just previously classified this below the level of a pandemic. They're like, no, this is not a pandemic. We don't need to worry about this. There's a few thousand cases worldwide. But, they've reconvened again, and they're going to make some decision. I haven't seen the result of that, what decision they've actually made there. So if anyone has seen that, please let me know. Chuck up in the comments. Some interesting stuff here, though. So they basically activated this operations center so that they can respond quicker. So they've gone, oh, we don't want to get caught out again. Bam, which I think is quite normal, and I would expect to happen. This is the sort of stuff. This is the world we live in now. post-COVID, where I think, you know, it felt like a few government organizations were caught a little bit with their pants down as far as pandemic responses go. And so then the result, this is my take on it, the result of them being caught with their pants down was a overreaction. And I think the last 2-3 years, what we've experienced is essentially an overreaction to a government or government organizations that were poorly prepared in the first place. Anybody who's been in prepping circles like I have for 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 years, that kind of space, pandemic was always something that we were not only thinking about, but expecting. Statistically speaking, it just makes sense that a pandemic of some level was going to hit. Yet none of the government organizations, or very few of the government organizations, were preparing as such, even though it was kind of like, that wasn't a crazy conspiracy theory. That was something that's like, well, that's just common sense, really, that we should be planning for that. I think they didn't plan for it. Now we got the overreaction with all the lockdowns and all the vaccine fucking madness and all the shit that we've had to put up with for the last 3 years. And now they are like on all their nerves are frayed, really. And anyone says like disease, they're going, oh, pandemic, and jump on it really, really quickly. That's what we're seeing here. CDC is freaking out straight away, and they're going to come out hard, come out fast. World Health Organization announced they will hold an emergency committee meeting on monkeypox. WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom said they would hold an emergency committee meeting as soon as possible due to evolving situation. Normal sort of language. The information that I was talking about the genetic variations was coming out of Portugal. So just to backfill everyone on what's happened here, there was an event that happened apparently in and around Spain where people came and they all must have intermingled and contracted monkeypox. Then they spread back out into the world. It was like a party sort of thing that happened. And then they went back out into the world, and all of a sudden we went monkeypox in the UK, monkeypox in the US, monkeypox in Australia, monkeypox here, and everywhere. And they have said with a certain amount of accuracy that it's probably come out of here for some reason. Not sure why it came into there. I haven't seen any evidence of how it got into there, but possibly that was one of the key events that helped spread it. So then it's gone out, and they're like, okay, well, it's out in the world now, and it's starting to spread. Now they're freaking out. Here's the thing. I had a look at monkeypox, and I'm like, okay, this mainly, like almost exclusively gets spread from actual touching of skin, and much more transmissible if there's an open sore and you've got an open wound, and that the transfer happens there. There was a whole heap of news that came out at the start. It's like, oh, it's droplets in the droplet particles and things like that. And it's like, no, there's actually no evidence backing that up. Like, sort of, kind of, but droplet particles of it coming out from respiratory type tract into open wound, maybe, but it's mainly skin on skin. Now, one of the reasons I think that they sort of freaked out and were like, whoa, monkeypox, let's not talk about that to start with, is that it's a fact that event that I was talking about happened to be something that was based around some sort of mainly homosexual gathering. And so then when it went out into the other parts of the world, it was homosexual and bisexual communities where it has been spreading, which, statistically speaking, are more promiscuous and more likely to involve themselves in behavior where they're coming into contact with people that they don't necessarily know very well. And that's just a statistic. I'm not casting any dispersion on anyone here, but I'm just saying that is generally what happens. And that's how we're seeing this travel at the moment. And there's this kind of undercurrent where nobody actually wants to talk about that fact, where I think that's actually kind of important that we know that. The more information we can get out there, and the more we can, as individuals, learn about anything in the world, the better we can arm ourselves against whatever it is. The better we can prepare ourselves against whatever it is. So I think this is important information to actually get out there, that people understand this. And if this keeps going down the path it's going, prepare for lockdowns again. as an individual, as a prepper, prepare for lockdowns. That's, I don't like to say that, but that's what I'm looking at the moment. And I'm going, oh, crappy crap. It's got really, this is something that, again, even with this first one, even with COVID, I did my own sort of research, which, I'm not a doctor or anything. I'm a sports scientist, so in the health sphere. So I do understand how to break down and read peer-reviewed journal articles to, I would say, probably a greater degree than just average people, and I do that. And I saw, I'm actually not at a significant risk here from this thing. So it wouldn't make sense for me to start doing behaviors like locking down in my own home, wearing masks everywhere, even getting a vaccine which has unknown efficacy. But this is what we're going to go into again. Just judging, I'm just taking historical data here. What did they do to us last time? They blanketed everyone. They just went, one size fits all. I know this only really affects at that point 60 people who are 65 years and older, but one size fits all. You can all stay home. You can all wear masks. You can all suffer the same. That's what we're looking at potentially happening here with the monkeypox thing. So I just wanted to lead off with that. Get that out. There's a number of other stories too leading up to why I'm sort of thinking about this. Biden admin has deployed 1.6 million doses of monkeypox vaccines in enhanced strategy, i.e., when they're saying enhanced strategy, they're saying normal kind of what would be a common sense strategy for an actual pandemic, and what they totally failed to do in the first place and continued to fail to do. So now it's enhanced, as it's in like proactive. Are you just talking about proactive? That's what it's going to be. SUSA headquarters, SUSA headquarters says, what state are you in? I am in the state of panic. No, I'm in the state of calm, relaxed joyfulness in life. I'm in New South Wales in Australia, if that's what you're asking. I'm in New South Wales, southern part of New South Wales, so the definitely the colder part of New South Wales at the moment. Like I'm pretty close to the nation's capital as well. If people want to come hunt me down, bring it. I'm ready. No, don't do that. You're in QLD. Nice. Probably, I don't know if you're feeling the rain yet. We've got it here today, and it's locked in for the next week. It looks like a pretty big weather event that we're looking at here. SUSA or SUSA. Please let me know if I'm saying that right or not. Yeah. Probably should have recharged my phone before I jumped on here. Yeah, very wet there today as well. So it's gonna remain wet. Just as a side note, jumping off monkeypox now. For Australia, east coast of Australia, if you haven't been following the weather patterns, which I keep telling you to do, please get into weather. It's really important. If you haven't been following it, we've got a huge weather event happening at the moment, which is just touching our shores now, where we're going to get a fair bit of rain over the next week, consistent rain over the next week, all throughout the eastern seaboard of Australia, and especially SUSA headquarters for you guys up north. It looks like it's angling in a bit more, so it's actually going to punch in all the way through, go inland Queensland, and dump a fair bit of rain up there. Prepare yourselves. Floods, storms, all that sort of stuff, power outages. These are the sort of things that come with rain events. Get yourselves ready. All right. Redlands Coast. I don't really know where that is. Don't know if I've been there. Redlands Coast. Cool. All right, the rest of the stories aren't, I didn't really put anything in any order, so it's just going to be a random like shotgun splatter of stories coming in at you today. US retailers cap contraceptive pill purchases. Obviously, post the SCOTUS dropping of Roe versus Wade, there's been this whole abortion, pro-life sort of thing that's blown up here. But one of the fallout effects, and I like to point these sort of things out because I always talk about the unintended, the second order, the third order effects of whatever happens. And that you've got the thing, the instigating event, and then you've got the human fallout that happens from that, or the human effect that happens from that. And it's quite often more important than the actual thing itself. So I've been talking about the Roe versus Wade sort of thing, not in the perspective of like what I think about that, but in the perspective of what the fallout is. So the things like civil unrest and stuff like that happening. Well, here's another one, and I'm pointing this out not for any particular reason apart from it is a great example of a run. And I always talk about this. If you haven't heard the terminology a run before, a run on something, a run on toilet paper is what we saw in March, April 2020, where people started freaking out, we're going to get locked down, and people's minds immediately went from, well, I mean, most people's heads are up their arse so far that that was the first thing on their mind was their arse. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to get toilet paper right now. I'm about to be locked down. So people rushed into the supermarkets and grabbed all the toilet paper off the shelves. And that is a run on a product. So that's an example of a run on a product. And I like to point them out because it is almost like clockwork. You can guarantee it. If there's an event, you need to think about, okay, what's the second, third order effects of that? This one here, we've got an event where people are like, oh, I can't just duck down the street on Monday morning and get an abortion anymore. Shit, I better go get on the pill. So they've started rushing in and getting contraceptives. I know it's insane, I know, but it's a madman world we live in, right? One of the big pharmaceutical or chemist type places, CVS, over in the US has said that look, we're going to have to put a cap on this. Amazon has already put a limit on how many you can buy off Amazon, apparently. Interesting stuff, right? So that's one of the reasons why I do this sort of stuff, where I look at news articles and I pour through things, and I'm trying to make that analysis where I'm going, okay, what's going to happen here? What might I need in the next 2 weeks, and will it be available? I need to know that. So I'm not on the contraceptive pill. I do not advocate for it. I actually am quite the opposite. But I'm just saying, and this really has nothing to do with the contraceptive pill at all. To me, I'm just talking about yet another example of things running out. And this isn't necessarily running out because it can't be made. It just gets it's running out because people have done a run on it. So people have gone up and bought up more than they need and stockpiled it or hoarded it very, very quickly. I think that's probably the differentiation. Preppers stockpile. Okay, we do it smartly. We plan for it, we budget it, and we do it over time. Sheeple hoard. They freak out, they panic buy, and they hoard. That's the delineation that I want to make out here. So if we stockpile, we never need to hoard. And when people freak out, when the sheeple freak out and buy everything off the shelf, we go, that sucks for you. Anyway, I'm going to go wipe my bum because I got toilet paper. A new superbug has been discovered in pigs capable of jumping to humans. Do I necessarily believe that? Or yes and no. Do these sort of things get released probably every couple of months, this kind of story? But is it getting thrown into the mainstream media at the moment to yet put more fear and pressure on our food system? Yes, that's what I think is happening there. Look at that sort of stuff. Understand that sort of stuff. It's got to do with antibiotics, these bugs that they're talking about. Humans are genetically very close to pigs. And so, pumping pigs full of antibiotics because of the system, the food system that we've been utilizing, which is pretty terrible food system that we've been utilizing. They're finding lots of antibiotics being used there, lots of antibiotics then getting these superbugs, and those superbugs could potentially jump over into human beings. So, something we need to think about and watch out for, but as much as possible, trying to avoid mass manufactured food of any sort, I think is probably a good idea. China bashes Asian NATO concept. So more of this rhetoric that's coming out. It's seeming more and more likely that if it's not NATO coming down to our part of the world, then they will create another form of NATO. I think that's pretty much like written in stone now, judging by everything that's happened over the past a couple of months, and judging by the talk that's in the media and coming out of Western countries in the past 3 to 4 weeks, it is quite clear now that the intent is to set up a NATO organization in and around China. So we're going to have NATO up there battling Russia. We're going to have NATO down here, or what would we call it? We wouldn't call it NATO. We'd call it the South Pacific Organization Treaty, the SPOT. Hey, there you go. That one's for free. The SPOT. So the SPOT and NATO. That's what we're going to end up seeing, I think, down here. And China is obviously not liking it because it's built. Everything is being built versus China at the moment. If I was China, I'd be feeling pretty friggin' threatened. Kind of rightly so, but also China doing some whack stuff. So pull your heads in. US consumer implodes as there's cut guidance for the second time this month, warns of cratering demand. The important thing that I want to point out here is the word cratering demand. This is something that, this is another term, if you haven't heard of it yet, an economic type term. If you haven't heard of it, you probably will soon enough. There's been all these terms, economic terms, that I think have been like bleeding into mainstream media and then bleeding into the greater social psyche that we've been having to quite rapidly like take on and go like, oh, okay, what does that mean? What does it mean? What you keep saying recession or depression or stagflation or inflation. What do all these things mean? And people are starting to cotton on to what the meanings of these words are, and that they don't all mean the same thing. I think to a lot of people, they're just like, oh yeah, all those words that you said, stagflation, inflation, depression, recession, it's all the same thing. It's just bad, right? The economy is just going down. It's like, well, no, yes. Okay, it's bad, and they are all bad, and the economy is going down, but they all have very different outcomes individually, and they all mean different things. So it's like, and potentially could make money in different ways depending on which one of those things is actually happening, or which combination of those things is actually happening. There's heaps more. Anyway, cratering demand. So what we're going to see, there's some predictions in there about oil prices, and I talked about oil prices, and I'm talking about crude oil here, not like vegetable oil. Crude oil prices going upwards of 200, and that's still a possibility. And we've got to see what OPEC's going to do here. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look like OPEC can create enough oil for the demand that we have. So essentially, supply and demand. We don't have enough supply. There's way too much demand, and that shoots prices up. And so people are saying $200 a barrel. We're at 100, and I think it dropped down to 114 or something this morning. But $200 a barrel is going to like just be insane. But here's the thing: at this $115 to $120 a barrel, it's already pushing consumers out of the market. Which, like I was saying, you got supply and you got demand. We got not enough supply and too much demand. But because of that price, demand comes down. Now we're getting things like cratering demand. As we come into this recession, depression, whatever it is, we will see people like pull back and my pennies need to stay in my pocket. They need to stay somewhere else. I need to put it under the bed. I don't know. I'm not going to spend it on a new MacBook Pro or a new, 80-inch LCD display screen or something like that. I don't need that new car or even that secondhand car. I'm just going to keep going with the one I've got. Anyway, consumer spending will stop across the board. So we'll have cratering demand where it will go, demand will drop. And all of a sudden that supply, which is sat at that point and demand was up here, demand drops below supply. And then all the people, the retailers and people who are trying to sell shit are like, well, I've got too much stuff and not enough people to buy it. Bang, price craters as well. And we see drops in price. And the circus goes on because then, oh, petrol's cheap again. Cool, I can fill up my tank again. Okay, now more people are doing that. And then demand increases, blah, blah, blah. This endless cycle that we're on of supply and demand keeps doing. And it should roughly even out at some point. But who knows when that'll be. Anyway, nice little economy lesson there for you this morning. This is what we're going to see though. As we all start to tighten our belts and close our wallets, we're going to see cratering demand within the market. It's going to have a whole heap of other effects in the economy as well. Because one of the things that happens is when we've got cheap stuff, more people buy that stuff. One thing that's often not talked about is velocity of money, is how much money is moving around and how quickly it's moving around. Well, if that starts to slow, stagflation. And it's very hard to get it up and moving again, because it's a big circle. This stops this stops that, this stops this stops that, which puts pressure back on that first one to stop even more. So it all is in a spiral where it slows down. That's a very poor way of explaining the economy. It's like the budget version of Economy 101. This is what we're going to start to see, though, this cratering demand. So the fact that inflation is going up, we might actually see little gluts here and there in the market. And the reason I point this out is because that's opportunity for us who are in a position to actually pick up things that we need or want, to go like, okay, you're waiting, bam, now's the point. I kept talking about the end of financial year sales, end of financial year sales. It's over now, right? End of the financial year has ended. We are in a new financial year. Congratulations, you made it. You made it 6 months through this 2022 apocalypse. But are all the end of financial year sales now a thing of the past? No. I woke up this morning and, kind of unsurprisingly to me, I've been sitting there on a few of them and looking at them like, I'm not going to buy this. I don't really need it. But I'm suspecting that it says 50% off, and tomorrow it might say 60% off. And I woke up and sure as shit, bam. We're extending it for one crazy day. Oh, one more week left. End of financial year specials, you can still get them. So I think there's a lot of retailers out there with surplus stock, with more supply than they have demand, and demand is dropping right now. Speaking of demand, India needs things off certain countries, and they're buying them off Russia. But more interestingly than that, India's largest cement maker, cement is super important for our modern world. It's another one of those things that people don't put a lot of interest into. It's like, what, there's an additive in diesel? That's not that important. No, without that additive in that diesel, entire countries stop. People starve to death. The economy crashes just without that little thing. People have forgotten these little things, or we ignore these little things. Cement's another one. Cement's huge for the way we build things nowadays. So India obviously still in a relatively expansionary sort of phase. So they're building up certain parts of their economy in certain parts of their country. They've decided to their largest cement maker has circumvented the dollar. And I like to point out these stories because I always find it interesting. The dollar, and especially the petrodollar, has had homogeny over the world's economic markets. They have had total control for almost 50 years. So what we're seeing happen now is a split. We're seeing other systems come up. We're seeing a second stream of trade, of world trade happen now. And this is yet another example of it. That they've done like a coal for yuan type deal, or what was the one? The oil for yuan deal between Saudi Arabia and China. But essentially, like, India's starting to set up deals in rubles. They're starting to set up deals in yuan with China and like Russia and China. So watch that space. India, by the way, is going to be the world's most populous country if it continues going the way it's going in not too long of a time. And considering that China's looking at a shrinking of their population, India's still on that growth phase. India will be the most populous country in the world. I can't remember the year, but it's not too far away. Here's a cool story. Scientists conduct experiment attempting to tap into parallel universes like Stranger Things. What could go wrong? Oh, God. So it hasn't got anything to do with CERN, actually, or the Hadron Collider. No, the Hadron Collider. I just like to call it the Hard-On Collider. Just seems like a real hard-on thing to do. Like, let's harness the power of a couple of suns. Let's try and create black holes. Let's super speed particles and smash them into each other and just see what happens. It's like super smart scientists doing redneck shit. Like, hey, I wonder what would happen if we strapped some TNT onto this gas cylinder and then shot it with a shotgun. Let's find out. That's what I see CERN as in the Hard-On Collider, or Hadron Collider. But no, this is another one. This is a scientist at Oak Ridge National Labs. It even sounds like it should be on a Stranger Things type TV show, Oak Ridge National Labs. They're trying to discover parallel universes. Now, after several years of searching, they have revealed what they have found so far. A team of physicists has been searching the evidence of a right-handed version of our left-handed universe. I don't know why they'd say left-handed universe. Is that a thing? Does anyone know if that's a thing? Specifically, scientists said they are looking for a mirror neutron by sending neutrons, one of the particles that make up atoms, into a tube with a blocked end, then seeing if any make it to the other side. Anyway, I like experiments like this. End of world type experiments, like collapse reality in on itself type experiments. Now, I'm at the point now where I'm just like, yeah, cool. All right, sure. You see the stories like, oh, they've found a tomb in Egypt that they've dug up, and it says never open this tomb, and they're opening the tomb and they're pulling out some DNA and they're going to replicate the DNA. I'm like, yes. What could possibly go wrong? What's the worst that could happen, right? Pandemic, massive fires, earthquakes. Speaking of earthquakes, there was some earthquakes somewhere in the US. I didn't capture the story, but somewhere in the US was rocked by a few earthquakes last night. So they need to keep an eye on those ones because I think there might be more. Mama Moose, good to hear from you. They need to stop fucking with God's world. Yeah. The way I look at it is like this. There's an entire system in the universe that was created, right? And it's created in harmony and it works the way it is. And as humans, we've been like continually like going, oh, what if we did this? What if we did this? Hey, can I control this? Ah, cool, I can control this. Can I control that? Yeah, I can control that. And now we're starting to find ourselves at a point like, look at all the stuff I can control. and now I have to control shit. Ugh. And we're constantly like trying to push buttons and chase our tail, fixing one thing after another, and realizing that the solutions that we put into place need fixing themselves in not too long of a time. Let's talk about the G7, what's happening there. Some journalists overheard a conversation between Biden and Macron. Macron, it kind of sounds like a cool bad guy name for Transformers. Macron. Biden and Macron were having a bit of a chat, and a journalist was just hanging around and was like, what was that? Macron told Biden that Saudi Arabia and United Emirates do not have enough oil capacity to replace Russian oil. So I've been talking about this yesterday in particular, where I was talking about OPEC meeting and saying like, okay, can we do this? All indications, like check the magic 8 ball. All signs point to no, they cannot. They can't replace the amount of Russian oil that has been curtailed now through sanctions. A lot of pressure. What we're starting to see now is all this pressure build up in that system that they've created with the sanctions, and the release valve is starting to come out now. So what we're seeing is like the US start to seriously backpedal and tell Ukraine like, we can't win this, and they've really painted themselves into a corner here because of all that propaganda that you got fucking rammed down your throat right when the Ukraine war started, and all the fucking blue and yellow flags that people plastered all over their bios, and all the virtue signaling and all the we're doing the right thing and Ukraine has to win because free, fair country, blah, 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 all that bullshit. Well, they've painted themselves into a corner now where they're going to have to very much back up and go like, yeah, well, I mean, Ukraine is free and fair country and we shouldn't let Russia do this, but the greater good, maybe. I don't know how they're going to sell this, but they're going to have to back off. They're going to have to like essentially capitulate this war in Ukraine. Here's one that's sent to me by one of my sources. Shell, the company that does petrol, Shell Petrol, Australian Workers Union in stalemate over Prelude dispute. So we've got industrial action aboard Shell's Prelude facility, which is an offshore drilling facility, I think, has brought unions and the resource company to a stalemate. So Shell and the trade union have stopped. I've talked about this before very, very briefly about my belief that we'll start to see the rise of trade unions. We'll start to see more strikes, more stalemates like this. This is not going to be an uncommon thing, I think, moving forward. Unions can have some very big benefits for individuals and individual worker rights. However, unions are, how do I put this? Quite often manipulative and a little bit nefarious in the way they do things. It's about the nicest way I can do it. And so I can see unions, knowing unions and how they've operated over the past couple of decades, like unions would be looking at the current crisis we have, and instead of going like, all right, well, we got to dig in and we got to help, like, if we can get Australian companies or, companies that are tied to Australia. Shell's not an Australian company, but is obviously working here off Australia. We can get them to pull more oil out of the wherever, and ease the burdens of blah 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 blah, and put more oil into the system. And maybe that's what we should do. They're not going to do that. They're looking at that and going like, oh, awesome, we've got them over a barrel now. Never mind the fact that they're actually making life worse for millions and millions of people by now having yet another issue in supply with this sort of thing. And like, yeah, oil, love it or hate it, whatever it is, we need it. But this is just one example, again, of this. Wait till it starts happening with food companies. It may have already happened with food companies. I just haven't picked up with it, where food company unions are going, no, we're going on strike, because they know that we're in a bad position and they'll utilize that. Sneaky unions. I just think like unions to me are synonymous with communism, and I just fucking hate communism. In case you haven't got that one yet. What do we got here? Some stuff coming out of the Independent UK newspaper. Only change linen if essential in hospitals. Yeah. So sick people on beds in hospitals. All right, off you go. You know what? Is it really essential that I change that? Hospital staff told to cut back on fresh sheets amid Brexit shortages. I mean, pick what you're going to blame it on now. Brexit, Putin, bloody water shortages, electricity shortages, gas shortages, who knows? But, whatever, pick your flavor. But shortage is everything. The everything shortage. And now one place that I want clean sheets is in a hospital, and they're talking about, we actually can't keep up with it. They've got a shortage in their ability. Shortage of linen and laundry will have knock-on effect on the provision of beds. So they're not going to be able to offer as many beds. Good thing we're not looking at another pandemic. Russia will respond if NATO sets up infrastructure in Finland and Sweden. So it looks almost inevitable now. It looks like a done deal that Finland and Sweden are coming into the fold in NATO. And so Russia has said, well, if you start setting up infrastructure in Sweden or Finland, we're going to respond. What does that mean? With Sweden and Finland, we don't have the problems that we have with Ukraine. They want to join NATO. Go ahead. That's from Putin. He told his state television. But, here's a key point, quote, but they must understand there was no threat before. While now, if military contingents and infrastructure are deployed there, we will have to respond in kind and create the same threats for the territories from which threats towards us are created. So essentially what Putin is saying there is like, okay, let them join NATO. That's fine. We don't care. But if you start building up there, if you put troops up there, if you start building bases there, we're going to have to do, well, he's basically saying we're going to have to do the same, but he's not saying that. He's saying what you're doing is threatening us. And if you do that, we will threaten you back. Increase in tensions. Okay. So the issue, one of the main driving issues about Russia doing this was the expansion of NATO. Now we can look at this in two different ways. And I've seen the Western media throw this at us a whole heap. They go, well, Putin did this because he was worried about NATO expanding, and because he did it, NATO's expand. So he has shot himself in the foot. Or we could look at it from the other side of the fence here as well and go, he was worried about NATO expanding, and NATO did expand, and so he continued to say, and this is over a number of years and years and years, like decades. So he continued to say he's worried about NATO expanding, and then NATO expanded again. And so he said, enough's enough. I'm stepping in. And when he did that, he said, I don't want NATO to expand anymore. And NATO went, well, we're expanding now, even more. If that was the thing that instigated Putin did it, what do you think NATO expanding is going to do? Is it going to all of a sudden Putin wake up one day and go, oh my God, Finland and Sweden just joined? Call off the war. Call off the war. I don't have the taste for this anymore. I can't. They're right. They called my bluff. No, he's not going to do that. This is only going to increase tensions in the area exponentially. So, yeah. Putin's also been traveling around. If you haven't seen this, Putin has left Russia, I think, since for the first time since the instigation of the war in Ukraine. And what it looks like he's doing is going to a lot of countries where he's creating alliances, and a lot of countries that just happen to be part of the former USSR. So watch that space. You've seen that episode of The Simpsons where Russia, like all the name plaque flips over and Russia Federation becomes the USSR again, and they just, that's what I think is going to happen. They'll get Lenin off ice and they'll be back into it. What's happening in the Middle East? The rise of the Arab-Israel axis pushes Iran to redouble nuclear talks. So I've talked about this before, that Israel versus Iran and plus friends happening in the Middle East. It's another cause for concern. This thing is an absolute powder keg in here. Iran, for its part, has been stepping things up in the realm in this battle, or Cold War, really. They've been stepping it up by heading down the path of nuclear proliferation, as in they do not have a nuclear weapon arsenal at this point, but they are rushing in to do it. So it looks like they're, and now Israel has been doing more links. So Israel's tied in with Saudi Arabia and I think Qatar. Iran, this has obviously got Iran's nose fairly out of joint. So they're like, all right, fuck you guys. We're going to continue doing this nuclear thing. All right. We asked for one thing. Just don't start creating alliances. Don't keep pushing us, and we'll just stick with our nuclear power program. But you didn't listen, and now we're going to make bombs. If they get to that point where they've made them, this is yet another nuclear potential war that we're looking at. So not only is it Russia versus NATO that is nuclear armed, not only is it Pakistan and India that are rubbing up against each other and are nuclear armed, or India and China, who are both nuclear armed states, or North and South Korea, North Korea being nuclear armed state. But we could also now have Israel and Iran. Officially, Israel does not have any nuclear weapons. Officially. Okay, so if Iran get nuclear weapons, then we will be looking at another quasi-war or de facto war between nuclear states. Not good. More protests. Buenos Aires. Truckers block highway in Buenos Aires Guess what that's about? Fuel shortages. Yep, that's all happening. See the union thing now? Unions stopping more fuel getting out to the system, causing worldwide violence and destruction as a result of what they're doing. They're not causing it, obviously, but their actions are exacerbating the situation. So I don't like unions that much. Anyway, truckers are blocking highways in Buenos Aires because they're protesting against fuel shortages. More protests. I keep talking about these protests. What I might do actually very soon is create a protest riots kit. So sometimes I put together a backpack that I would utilize if I was, say, going with a journalist who was reporting in an area that was a protest area or a riot area. And have a look at all those sort of things and give you some ideas about some of the stuff that you can maybe do if you happen to be living in and around areas that you think might be marred by protests and or riots, or if you're going to have to be working or moving through those areas. Okay, Austria ditches climate goals and resorts to coal power. So Austria has become the latest European country to turn its back on climate goals in desperation as it prepares to reopen a coal-powered plant amidst concerns over gas supplies. So this has been happening all throughout Europe. We kind of had a chance, I think, to like have a big green revolution. And I don't think people quite realize this, but I feel like our chance to do that was probably around 2005, 2010, maybe even as late as 2015. But it's, we may well get there, but it's going to be a real hard road now. But we're not going to be able to do it in any sort of short time. So the whole Kyoto Protocol, the whole, carbon neutrality by 2030, 35, 50, whatever countries or whatever the latest deal was, it's just not going to happen. We're not going to see that. We're seeing a collapse of green. We're seeing the opposite direction now. And like it was always going to go this way to a certain extent. This idea that we could just switch over to green like that overnight. I'm sorry, Greta, but some of us live in the real world, okay? Real consequences. So if we want people to starve to death, if we want people to freeze to death, if we want people to go through harsh conditions and thus riot and thus tear cities apart, if we want chaos and destruction, and if we want war, which it would probably push a lot of people into, and mass migration, which would increase a whole heap of other tensions going on in areas. If we want that, then let's just switch to green now and get it over and done with. Rip the Band-Aid off and we'll go, no, fuck. No coal, no fuel, no nuclear for some reason. And we're just going to use sunlight, wind. Oh, wait a minute. How do we make those things? Shit. We've got to dig that stuff up out of the ground. How do we dig stuff up out of the ground? Do you use solar panels to do that? No. Use petrochemicals to do that. So, I mean, it's a long, rough road ahead for green revolution. And I'm not anti-green. I like to say this. I'm very pro that. In fact, what I'm mainly pro about is individuals or smaller community-type based energy production systems, so that we look after our own energy. We don't rely on governments to do that necessarily. We can get there, but I don't think it's something you should be relying on governments to do or big business. I think this is a groundswell thing that needs to happen. Sri Lankan president reaches out to Putin for oil deal. Please, sir, can I have some more? Sri Lanka, obviously in the hurt locker, they're running out of fuel. Who's got cheap fuel? Who's not liked by the world right now? Russia. Well, Sri Lanka's like, hey, pal, buddy, Putin, comrade, you have some of that oil, please? I think they'll get it. Actually, I reckon they'll probably get it. This is almost a win-win situation. Sri Lanka gets its oil. They get to not go further into gross amounts of debt that they're already in. and Russia gets to sell some of its oil, a little bit more of its oil, not like it's hurting for this, but sell some more oil, and B, actually do net good in the world. Ooh, that's going to hurt some fucking liberals, isn't it? Ah, no. Hitler likes puppies and kids? No, it doesn't make sense. Russia could end up, actually kind of looking a bit shiny in this situation. Also, who else is buying Russian fuel? Who are these naughty kids buying Russian fuel right now? Who's still buying fuel from Russia, fossil fuels? Well, let's look at the countries. We have here, the top of the list, China. No surprises. But only just a little bit behind China, Germany. Number 3, Italy. Number 4, Netherlands. Number 5, Turkey. Then Poland, France, India, South Korea, Bulgaria, Belgium, Greece, Spain, Japan, Austria, Romania, UK, and Slovakia. Oh, hey, dog. Have I been on this too long? So all these good intentions, all these sanctions, all this, rhetoric and virtue signaling and blah, blah, blah. Well, there's the proof of it. Proof is in the pudding there that a lot of these countries, just to name the top 5 again, China, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and Turkey. I mean, Turkey and China, yeah, I get it. China is definitely, if we're going to draw a line here, that on the other side of it, okay? Turkey is on the line, and everyone can kind of see what way they're leaning, but they've still got one foot in the West camp. But the rest of these, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Poland, France, what's up with that, guys? What's up with that? You figuring out that you can't actually live without this? That's a warning from my phone that it's about to die. So I better wrap this up. I've been on here for a long time, 51 minutes. Let's try and wrap this up in the next 10 minutes. All right. So I was talking about NATO. We've got Finland, Sweden. Turkey's like, no, you can't come in because you fund the people that we don't like, i.e. the Kurdish people of northern Syria and parts of Turkey. We classify them as terrorists. And so we want to crush those terrorists. And they just happen to be on oil fields. That's not the reason. That's not the reason. It's not that Kurdish people are sitting on oil fields. No. They're terrorists. We want to kill them. And you're funding them, Finland and Sweden. So we're not going to let you into NATO. And then all of a sudden, Turkey just did a backflip. And they're like, yeah. Finland, Sweden, come on in. And everyone's like, oh, that's a bit weird. That, like 2 hours ago, you said no, never. What happened? They didn't change their policy on what they were doing. Biden says Turkey will get new F-16 jets. He also claims, by the way, that this has got nothing to do with the NATO deal. Nothing to do with it at all. We just want to give them jets. Yeah. I think they need some F-16s. We're not using them that much. We're kind of mothballing them, so they can have them. No big deal. Nothing to do with NATO, though. It's like, oh, come on. Like, the amount of under-the-table deals that must have gone down here for Turkey, I would love to know what Turkey's got right now. Man, I reckon they got a good little goodie bag from the world, and especially from the US, who are rapidly trying to buoy up NATO so they can start to backwheel because they're going to have to go fight China. That's the reality at the moment. US knows, okay, this war's going nowhere in Ukraine. That one in China, that's about to kick off. We're the ones who have to go deal with that. Shit. NATO, get your shit together. Get your shit together. So that's what's happening here. And they're basically doing anything to do it. Biden announces permanent US base in Poland as well. So they're pushing the troops that they've got in NATO at the moment that are in the area. They're pushing them right up to that border now. So you can see them solidifying. That's what I'm looking at here. They're trying to solidify NATO. They're trying to solidify their position there. And then I think US is going to have to switch its attention to other things, i.e. China. Okay, last story. I really like this one. Last story is a bit of a financial one. Zimbabwe Central Bank, for those who don't know the history of Zimbabwe, it's a fantastic example of how to fuck an economy hard, like real hard. They screwed the pooch on that one big time. And if you ever want to like understand hyperinflation, go read what has happened in Zimbabwe in the sort of not too distant past. Anyway, they're experiencing hyperinflation even worse now, where it's jumped from, I don't have the numbers here, but I think it went from 120 to 190% inflation. It's pretty hectic there, okay? A lot of inflation. So their central bank has just come out and it said, we're going to offer gold coins as inflation ravages the country. So to try and give people an option to actually hold on to savings, to hold on to wealth, they've gone, oh, we're going to have to put gold coins out there. It's like, if this is not the biggest admission from anyone, from any central bank, that actual funny money, actual plastic or paper money is worthless. It's not even worth friggin' toilet paper, and gold has actual worth, then this is it. You need to pay attention to this. Here is a country that is going back essentially in time to the early 1900s, to the 1800s, and bringing gold back, make gold great again. I mean, you don't have to make gold great again. It's always been great. But here's the proof. Proof is in the pudding here. They're like, oh shit. Well, we want a way for people to actually have to hold on to their wealth. So we'll put out gold coins. Speaking of gold, at the moment, the price is down on it, but the Aussie dollar is down against the greenback. So still, I mean, it's an okay price at the moment. What is my assessment is at a good price at the moment is silver. Silver, there's some good deals on silver at the moment, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not personally buying any at the moment because I feel like I'm at an okay point for it. But you know, that might be something you want to think about. So I just wanted to throw that story in there so you can think about what is wealth. If you want tokens of wealth, then maybe start to gear your mind towards things like precious metals. It might be a bit of a better investment at this time in history than other things like stocks, which are cratering, and crypto, which, you know, it's not looking good. It's not looking good at all. Not today. Sorry. If you're into crypto, don't open it today, please. You don't need that stress. No, Bitcoin went below 19,000 overnight. Ethereum is still kind of sitting up there, but it's dropped a lot. I think it started going back up towards 1,700. It's back down to about 1,400 or something now. I can see that going down to 900 easy. Yeah, the brakes are off that. But, you know, it remains to be seen. You know, crypto could have been our great hope, or it could have been the tulip bubble of our modern era. If you don't know what the tulip bubble is, check that one out. It's a great example of hyperinflation and insanity in markets. And that happened in Dutch markets in, I want to say 150 years ago, 200 years ago, maybe. Yeah, so what we're seeing isn't new, by the way. These things always happen. History doesn't necessarily repeat, but it definitely it wears the same clothes sometimes. All right, that's it for today. I'm going to cut it there. I'm at 58 minutes and 23 seconds. That's quite enough of the time to be taking up. So hope you're doing well out there. If you're on the east coast of Australia, try and stay dry. Next 7 days, it looks like a bit of rain is going to be hitting us. So stay safe, stay dry. Make sure you're concentrating if you're driving on the roads and driving safely, please. And think about all those preps that you should be doing when it comes to things like rain events. Apart from that, I want to thank you, Maney. Thank you very much for joining me, for listening into my ramblings. As always, if you've got any questions, please feel free to shoot them through to me. I love the questions. I am at the moment experimenting, trying to get up on some of these, like all the young fogey things. So I'm like looking at Discord or something, which appears to be more of a chatty type thing format, which might be better to have discussions and such on in. But anyway, I'll keep you posted on that. Until next time, stay safe, keep prepping, and Semper Paratus.